second. And there we are. And you're live, Hightower. Take it away.
Okay, howdy ho, America. Hightower's Lowdown back with you on this Tuesday evening for our occasional happy hour. And what a happy hour it is because we had a productive election. Whenever that was, a month ago, was it 3 years ago? I can't remember. But anyway, we've had an election. And it has not yet been acknowledged, but nonetheless, there it is. We have results, and we, the people, are on the move. And so this is an hour of hope. And on our happy hour, I'm starting out with a celebration beer. It's called 2020 Celebration. It's produced by Sierra Nevada Brewery out in Chico, California, to which I have been. But also in North Carolina. They got a brewery in North Carolina as well. So we're inviting you to have your libation at the table and of any sort. And join us here in this talk tonight about what has just happened in this election. And with us to lead it off is a terrific young leader. Nse Ufot is her name. And she's born in Nigeria, raised in southwest Atlanta, Georgia. Longtime activist there, a lawyer. And by the way, Nse, don't try to pull any lawyer tricks on me because I was in law school for a week and a half. A week and a half at George Washington University. Yes, indeed. They still, I think they have a plaque on the wall of the shortest attendee ever at their law school. Nonetheless, so Nse Ufot is the CEO, the director, the chief honcho of the New Georgia Project. And this is a grassroots organization, been in operation for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years now, but had an enormous impact in this year's election. After all, they were the leaders in flipping this hard red state to a radiant blue. And that is an enormous accomplishment. The first time for a deep South state to vote for Democrats since in 1992, I think it was. And was that the result of Biden's charisma, Nse? was that the result of the Democratic Party's machine operating?
Well, it was obviously.
Yeah, sure. They say it was.
Listen, it's so funny. I got this question the other day. Deadspin is a sports magazine, and they cover the business of sports, right? And so, as you know, the Atlanta Hawks were the first team in the league to make their arena available for early voting.
Right.
And so
Kudos first to them.
All right. So the first question from the reporter was, do you think, so there were 40,000 folks in Fulton County, where Atlanta is, who voted in the Hawks Arena. And as it is now known, it's official, the margin between Trump and Biden was 14,000 votes. So it said, do you think that the Atlanta Hawks turned the state of Georgia blue? And and like, that is the answer.
Yeah, right.
No.
Exactly. Right.
I think that there's a desire to sort of, people want a messiah, right? People want a savior, and that is, they're not real. It's not sustainable. It does, a movement it does not make. And with all due respect to the president-elect, he did not turn Georgia blue. Organizing did.
Bingo. Your organizers did, and good organizations like yours. Let's talk a little bit about that. First of all, I very rudely touted my drink, the 2020 Celebration fresh hop beer. What have you got there, Nse?
Well, I have a couple more meetings after we celebrate together. So I have some peach hibiscus sweet tea.
Peach Georgia peaches.
Georgia peach, exactly. And sweet tea feels redundant. And we've had this conversation before. I don't know people who drink tea that's not sweet. I don't understand that.
Yeah, right. It's a Southern thing. Want some
So,
sweet tea? Well, of course. I mean,
for the occasion.
Good.
I'll get some whiskey when I get home tonight.
All right. So this is our hour of hope, our happy hour of hope here tonight with Nse Ufot, who's the director of the New Georgia Project, which is a grassroots, very grassroots, independent organization of ordinary folks that are going out there and putting together a political operation that actually wins. And I want to explore with you a little bit, Nse, the concept of the organization, because this is something that the Democratic Party does. I've been a Democrat all my life, and I've been, much to the amusement of the people of Texas, actually got elected as a Democrat a couple of times, so I know the Democratic Party, and I respect certainly the history and tradition of the Democratic Party, but they're not in touch in the way that y'all have been in this election. And y'all are, you focus, as I understand it, on the culture of voting. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I maintain that voting is a cultural act. It is so how people vote, right? The idea that, some people, I've been voting at my elementary school for 20 years, right? It's literally the place where I went to elementary school. I get up, I have a voting day outfit, right? Because I'm going to see my neighbors, right? And so it makes sense. And again, before these sort of innovations in voting, before COVID made vote by mail as popular as it is in certain states, right? I was an election day before work, coffee with my neighbors,
right.
Cute outfit so people can see me, voter. That's
Perfect.
who I was. And so when you think about being in the middle of a pandemic, when you think about the efficacy of vote by mail, talking to older Black voters in rural parts of the state and saying, all right, we want you to vote by mail, it represents a shift in culture. And so we need to treat it as such, which means organizing conversations, which means having people surface their concerns about it and addressing it. But it also just means time, right? And yeah, I think that also there's a culture of voting in presidential elections, right? That people think that like I'm a super engaged citizen because I vote every 4 years, of course, right? Without about city council and the mayor's races and the state legislative races and the school levies, right? And all the stuff that happens in between. And so, we need to start talking about municipal elections and how important they are to like our actual lives. So it's a cultural thing that is not going to just get messaged away. And
you refer to those as super voters. You're trying to create super voters.
They are.
Did they dress up in costumes, or what do you mean?
I would love for that to be a thing, Jim Hightower, and I feel like you can help us make that happen. But ultimately, it's just people who vote in every election that they're eligible to. So some folks call them, frequent voters, et cetera. But super voters, and we like the idea of, superheroes for democracy. Right. But yeah, it's just people who vote in every election in which they're eligible. And so the thing is, how do we, a lot of times it's a lot of seniors who are super voters who vote in every election, a lot of Black women who vote in every election. And so how do we make that the norm? How do we get people to vote like our grandmothers and our grandfathers? How do we get people to vote like Black women?
I want to explore that a little bit more with you just in a second, but I want to divert just a second to something that you indicated, and that is municipal elections and local elections. We had a presidential election, but and we had a congressional election, senatorial, et cetera, but we had a local election. We had sheriffs elected all across the South that in counties that never had, that mostly opposed the sheriff. I remember campaigning years ago, and I was out near Abilene, and I was talking to this guy, and he said, well, I was really mad at the sheriff, and I wrote letters, and I complained, and I went to City Hall and testified at county court and testified against him and stuff. And now I'm not even mad at the sheriff anymore because I filed against the son of a bitch and I beat him. I am the sheriff. So that is a revolution right there. And we won these enormous races this year for sheriff in southern counties that had never experienced this before. So that's great hope. But I want to get back to this sense of how of the culture of voting and how you make.
Say before, I don't want to get the sheriff's thing because
Okay.
I think that is also a story of the 2020 cycle in Georgia that doesn't get talked about. So Ahmaud Arbery, young man running, was murdered by some vigilantes. The district attorney sat on the video for 74 days, and didn't do anything until there was international pressure, international media pressure, and organizing. Her name was Jackie Johnson, and currently she's unemployed. Now, I would never brag about contributing to Georgia's unemployment rate. I'm sure that there'll be someone else that will employ her, but she's out of here. Cobb County and Gwinnett County are two counties in the northern suburbs of Atlanta, and horrible sheriffs, right? There's a program in Georgia called 287G that allows local law enforcement to act as ICE agents. And so people, if they suspect someone of being undocumented, can round people up, et cetera. And we have elected sheriffs in both counties.
Way to go.
They refuse to, continue to participate in that program, that the money that they're getting from Department of Homeland Security is not worth the human rights violations and the terror that has been visited upon those communities. Both of DAs in those counties got unelected as well. And we brought in people of color who have said, right, that they are going to be accountable to community, that they understand what community's priorities are. Now we're going to give them an opportunity to do that. And if they don't,
right,
they can get unelected as well.
Yeah.
And so idea that I know the story that takes all the oxygen out of the room is the presidential race, right? That's everyone's that's the case in every state. But what's happening on the county level in Georgia as well lets me know that this is real, that this wasn't just anti-Trump sentiment, that organizing gets the goods. Yeah,
that's right. That's in North Carolina. That's here in Texas even. So that's real change, and you build from the bottom up. Because that affects people on a daily basis. You're a person of great spirit, and I like the way you say you give these people who get elected the opportunity to perform. Tell us what you got. Show us what you got.
Get a chance.
And they will talk down the road about your reelection. But and very important thing that y'all are doing, that again, my Democratic Party seems to have abandoned, and that is the notion that voting ought to be fun. That it should not be an onerous process. Yes, you've got to stand in line because of suppression tactics by the right wing. But that we also on our side, we have to find a way to have people actually enjoy being in line.
Absolutely. Listen, I remember a time. No, let's be clear. I was not alive, but I remember reading a time people would get dressed and pack a picnic basket and head down to the town square to go vote. It was a whole thing, right?
That's right.
And we want to inject some of that, again, as we think about changing the culture of voting, that we would like for the folks that were born in 2002 who are voting for the first time in these elections. Oh my goodness. It blows my mind that people who were born in 2002 are now. But I don't want their experience, their only experience of voting, to be stories of rampant voter suppression and
Right.
8, 9, 10, 11-hour lines in a so-called, liberal city like Atlanta.
Right.
We want people to experience joy and lean into their power. There was a 18-year-old first-time registrant, NGP registrant, who said, it just hit me. I think I helped save America. Right?
How about that?
And I could save my family and I could save people's lives, because the
Bingo.
president told us to inject bleach. The governor was the last state to close, and Georgia was the first state to open, right? And 1 out of every 1,000 Black folks in this country has died due to COVID, right?
Right.
And so I think that it's not hyperbole. I don't think that it's exaggeration. And I love that these 18-year-old babies who are voting for the first time really get to see in real time the
Yep.
power of their vote.
Well, you mentioned that it should be a joyous occasion. Deanna, I think you've got a little tape there, a little video of a group called Joy to the Polls.
Yeah.
People who brought the raucous to the polls. Can we play that?
Sure. Here's one of the clips from Joy. FYI, it's playing. You guys can't hear it, I'm sorry. But it's one of the videos from outside the church in Philly, the cha-cha line to the left and the right. All right, I'm going to cut back to you guys. And we're back. Go ahead.
Okay, well, that's, if you got to stand in line, you might as well dance in line. And that spirit is what we ought to be cultivating in this country. It shouldn't be trying to keep people from voting, but make people look forward to going to vote. There was Arizona turned blue also this time, for the first time in eons. And a key vote in Arizona that flipped it to blue was the Navajo Nation out there. And they organized something called Ride to the Polls, horseback, because their polling station was 10 miles away from where they were. So they organized, first they got people registered, and then they organized them to go on horseback rides to the polls. Now that's dynamite stuff, isn't it? That's what we've got to be doing, because it's everyday democracy, right? Nse, it's not just go vote on election day.
No, not at all. First of all, that's not exciting.
Yes,
that's
right.
not exciting. It sounds like a duty that you gotta slog through to do. So, some of the ways that we're addressing that. I remember being a teenager and never having cool sneakers until I got my own job and paid for my own sneakers. And so what we did is had a raffle, gave away 50 pairs of the coolest sneakers to come out this year on National Voter Registration Day. And it was random, so anybody could apply to get the sneakers, and we only had 50 pair to give away, but it also helped us register 9,000 people to vote in one day. Right?
There you go.
Participate, on election day. So I don't know if any of you have young ones in your lives, but watching people play video games is kind of a thing now. And so Twitch is a platform. It's like YouTube, but with better graphics, I'm told. I don't know, for gamers. And we did an activation called Twitch the Vote. We brought in Beyonce's mom, right, to talk about the power of the youth vote and the power of Southern progressives. We brought in Dr. Mae Jameson, who was the first Black woman to travel space. We brought in a bunch of professional video game players, young Black and brown kids, young women gamers talking about politics while playing video games. And we had 500,000 unique viewers because we were on the front page of Twitch on election day. We had young people coming in talking about just giving us 45 seconds about what it was like to vote for the first time, right? And like I said, 500,000 unique people showed up to watch our live stream on election day. And so we brought joy to the polls, right? But we also brought sort of just gamer culture, youth culture. I think that there's also a belief that, like, you know, what is it? Like for sports, it's shut up and dribble, right? It's shut up and dribble. Like, we just want to see you play. We don't want to hear about your politics, LeBron James, right? We don't want to hear about your politics. What is it? The coach Popovich, right? And what's the guy who took it? Colin Kaepernick. We don't want to hear about your politics. Just shut up and dribble. I think that some of that exists within youth culture and within gaming culture. And we are cracking all kinds of ceilings, breaking all kinds of norms, and really talking about the America that we want to live in with young people. And so, yeah, I think it's joy. I think it's culture. And I think all of those things together contributed to, you know, the victory that we saw on Tuesday. Listen, 40% of the people who showed up to vote were under the age of 40.
Oh, wow. Is that right? That's amazing. All right. I want to bring in our old pal, George Goehl, out of People's Action. We've had George with us many, many times because he's with us across the board. But before we go there, Deanna, we've got some people want to make a comment here. You want to tell us what's going on the screen?
Sure. Lots of love from all over the country. Once again, we've got Youngstown, Ohio. We've got Eastern and Western Massachusetts. Indianapolis, George, represent. We got your Indiana people here. We'll bring George on in a second. We got Fort Worth, Washington State. And you know how I love that. Everybody shows up to the Hightower show from all over the country. But anyway, the comments coming in is there's been kind of two main questions for Nse. One is, what is everybody seems to want to know what New Georgia Project's relationship to Stacey Abrams' project is, and then also, most importantly, and what I see a lot of is, how can people from outside the state support the work that's continuing to happen in Georgia? Because we hear a lot about people like, oh, I'm going to move to Georgia for the runoff. And, you know, and maybe that's not the best idea. But listen, so tell us what to do, basically, is what we're saying.
So one, don't move to Georgia. The Secretary of State just put out a press release yesterday, claiming that he would prosecute organizations that encourage people to move to the state for the act of voting. Now, I am not going to debate him about why that is unconstitutional and like all of that, but like he seems on a warpath. Like, just let him just do his job. They've been okay up to this point. I'm going to let him do his job. So here's the thing. Stacey Abrams founded the New Georgia Project. Like, she was our, initial board chair when she rolled off in 2017, in preparation for her run for governor. People know the rest after that. And so Fair Fight was founded in the aftermath, Fair Fight, Fair Count, and a think tank that she's working on. These are all orgs that were founded in the aftermath of her stolen governor's election. So there are organizational cousins. Is that a thing?
There you go.
Is that a thing? Okay.
It is now, yeah.
And then how people can help. Listen, I believe that all labor has value. And so I don't ask our staff of organizers to work for free. And the way that we are able to till the soil, the way that we are able to chop wood and carry water, the way that we are able to help sort of create the conditions for wins for working families, and then wins that we're going to be able to defend beyond one election cycle, is by having building this infrastructure. And so listen, your time, your talent, or your treasure, to harpen back to, my Black church roots. If you have any of those things to contribute, your time, your talent, or your treasure. The 21st, we're doing a live stream, and it is a welcome, all are welcome invitation to people who want to learn how they can support us and support our work over the next 7 weeks, but also over the next 7 months and the next 7 years. They should join us.
Yes.
We're New Georgia Project Action Fund, or New Georgia Project on all the social media. NewGeorgiaProject.org is the website. And so there's that. So we're going to be making phone calls. We're going to be sending out text messages. We're going to be having some in-person activations. We're going to knock on 1 million doors across the state. And so if any of that sounds interesting to you, we're trying to make like 15 radio ads and commercials, video. So
no, it's totally, all of that is essential. And don't just drop in, hang in, and do it where you are also. Right. This doesn't just have to happen in Georgia. It can happen in any state in this country. And Nse, I've got to warn you that not only are a good number of progressives wanting to come to Georgia to help you, but Ted Cruz wants to come to Georgia. And we're willing for that to happen, but we will not take him back. So consider that.
Right. I was gonna say, just that sweet fascist beard.
Well, let's flip now just a little bit and say, stick with us, please, because a pal of yours, a cohort of yours, and a cohort of mine, a compadre of all things progressive, George Goehl, who heads People's Action organization that is Georgia's based in Chicago, but they're all over the country. And Georgia, I want to start out because you wrote a piece called "Blessed Be the Fighters," gratitude for organizers. And a lot of people think, well, political organizers, that's a profession. I can't do that. How did you become an organizer?
Oh, Lord. Well, to be honest, I was in a bit of trouble and eating at a soup kitchen in southern Indiana. And I mean, it's a long story, but one of the cooks took an interest in me and gave me a job kind of under the table, gave me half his wage. He made $3.85 an hour, and he gave me half of it to come in and wash dishes to kind of help me get out of trouble, and saw something in me, invested in me, and I eventually got a real job washing dishes at the soup kitchen, and then and got real into it. And then, in Indiana, you don't go to get your left politics. So it took a minute for me to piece things together, but 3 years into it, I looked up and the same people were in line as the first day I got there. Right. And I realized, like, hey, nobody starved on our watch, but the reason that people are poor and need to be in a soup kitchen in the first place, that hadn't changed. And luckily around then, I kind of randomly at the library found a book on organizing, and then we started organizing out of the soup kitchen, and that's how it happened.
Soup kitchen politics. I love that.
Hey, yeah.
That is something strong.
But on that organizing thing, I just think, like, there's a bunch of stuff people want to debate after this election, but I think one thing that's not debatable is like that organizing put this election in the win column for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Like that is how it happened. You take community organizing and the work that Nse is talking about, and it happened in a bunch of the states that flipped. Like you take that out of the equation, and I think Donald Trump is a 2-term president. And I just think people need to remember, everybody's interested in Georgia now, or people get interested in a state. Like a lot of people have been building this for 10 years. Like building when nobody cared, building it down ballot, building it when you couldn't figure out how to pay for it. And like, but if you stick with organizing long term, we can win a bunch of stuff. But you got to be there not just when the spotlight's there, but year round and often for a decade.
Yeah, it's the long term. I think of the women's suffrage movement. The convention in upstate New York there in 1842, I think it was, that Sojourner Truth and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and the other leaders of that movement, none of them ever lived to vote.
Right.
Decade after decade after decade, but they built the movement and nurtured that movement to the point that it did come down in 1919, I guess it was, when we did get that. So that's the long-term vision.
Moved Woodrow Wilson to where he needed to be, right? So he got all the glory, right, as the president that signed, like oversaw the signing of the 19th Amendment. But let's be clear, Woodrow Wilson wasn't no feminist.
No.
Support him,
right?
right?
Yeah.
So that's super important. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was that organizing, and it came down in the vote among the states to ratify the amendment to vote in Tennessee, in the Tennessee legislature. And there was a young man, really young, I think he was 26 or something like that. And he was a new state legislator, and he was going to vote no. And it was down to a tie. So his vote would have been no, and the amendment would not have been ratified. But he got a note from his mother to say, be a good boy and stand with the women on this. And he changed his vote. And that one vote, with that organizing in that state, made all the difference in the world for us today. So that to me is the richness and the importance of organizing, because it's not going to come from the moneyed elites, of course. We know that, the corporate powers and Wall Street and their political operatives, but it's got to come from us, and we have to do that ourselves. But it's not a chore. It is at least a vocation. It doesn't have to be your occupation, but your vocation is possible there. Willie Nelson told me once, he said the early bird might get the worm, but it's the second mouse that gets the cheese. So, we got to be out there fighting for that. And we need, that's why people like you, Nse and George, and more important than you, I think you would agree, are the folks that are with you, that do this day in, day out work, because you can lead, you can provide instruction, you can help, but we got to stop waiting on heroes and leaders. We have to be the leaders. So Georgia, you make the point that Biden's election, let's just stick with the presidency right now, Biden's election, that grassroots did this. It was not the Democratic National Committee. It was not the chair of the Democratic Party. Again, it was not Biden's charisma that actually produced this victory. So how do we keep that going, though?
Well, I think one thing people forget also is, like, organizing put this in the win column, and this was not organizing's candidate. So right. I think just remember that. A bunch of people say, wow, this is not what we had in mind, and we're still going to get the job done because we're clear on what the primary contradiction here, and that's Donald Trump in the White House. And as Nse was talking about, which I really appreciate, there's tons of stuff down ballot that nobody's even talking about or giving much ink to. But, like, I would just say to people watching, like, always remember the organizer. Like, don't get caught up in the electeds. Don't get caught up in the political operatives. There's some people that you'll never know their name that are out knocking on doors, that are meeting with 5 or 6 leaders, that are blocking an eviction, blocking a family farm foreclosure, bailing somebody out of jail at night. There's a quote in that story you mentioned, Jim, that my organizing mentor, Shel Trapp, used to always quote this Thomas McGrath letter to an imaginary friend. And the final 3 lines are this: blessed the agitator whose touch makes the dead walk. Blessed the organizer who discovers the strength of wounds. Blessed all the fighters. And I just think, like, I felt like in 2018, healthcare was the winner in the election. In 2020, I think organizing was the winner.
Yeah. And so we've got to build on that. And an important part of this, and I want to not digress, I guess, transit to an element, because all the media and the political pundits and those things say, well, the Democrats lost the rural areas again. They can't win the rural vote. But are we even competing for the rural vote? And that to me, I'll just give you an example. Everybody's talking now who's going to be in Biden's cabinet, who's going to be the Secretary of Treasury, who's going to be the Defense Secretary, who's going to be the Attorney General. Who's going to be the agriculture commissioner? The agriculture department is an enormous, powerful outreach agency, little d democratic agency with a lot of access possible in it, now controlled by the moneyed powers, but it could be controlled by the people power if we just go out there and get it. Georgia, y'all been organizing out there in areas, rural areas that are considered Trump country. Is there such a thing as Trump country?
Oh, good Lord. There's a bunch in there. First, I just on rural, there's 60 million people in the U.S. that live in rural communities. And it's actually a pretty stringent definition. It's places with 2,500 people or less. Two, like rural America is way more diverse than most Americans think of it. You know, the Latinx community is the fastest growing part of rural America. Huge swaths of the South that are, I mean, there's 102 counties in the country that are majority Black. Most are in the South and most are inclusive of rural. And then half the country's Native Americans live in rural communities. So there's this whole myth of rural America is only white. And like, if Democrats or progressives want to just say, like, we're going to give you a 60 million person lead in election, which is kind of what's happening right now, like, I don't know. I don't think we're that good to be giving somebody a vote lead. But in 2008, President Obama won 43% of the rural vote. In 2016, Secretary Clinton won just over 30%. Democrats don't have to win rural, but you can't get your ass handed to you. And that's what's been happening lately. And so I just think, you know, we got to get in there and fight. There's lots of ways to do it. I think there's a kind of Democratic Party operative model, which is we're going to win over white rural voters by dodging race, dodging immigration, and basically moving to the center. And we think that you engage folks that is race conscious, talks to people about the ways that race creates different outcomes for different people based on race, and how racism is the reason we aren't all on the same team in the first place, and winning some stuff. Like, if you do that, you could actually win some elections, but also help wake a bunch of the country. And I think that's got to happen. Or because I would say, like, we could go up like we did when President Obama got 43% of the vote. But I hate to say it with rural white folks, and I grew up in rural Southern Indiana, I don't think we've hit bottom. And that is some scary stuff.
Can I just I just want to add that I think that is part of what is happening in Georgia. I think that when people hear, Georgia, you're exactly right. When people hear rural, I think that it is code in a lot of circles for white conservative. And Georgia just defies that definition every day. There's, 20, 30 counties in the state that are rural, like the entire county, just full of rural cities and rural towns that are majority Black. And then you add a plurality of people of color, that number gets up to 30 counties, like whole counties, right? And so I think that matters. I also think that part of like our organizing is, tilling the soil year after year in places that had been ignored and forgotten, and that were not a part of sort of fancy political operatives' plan to win because they didn't think that they could win in those places. But we're taking counties that were 80-20 Trump in 2016, and Trump still won it, but now it's 55-45.
Hello,
and
yeah.
What that means is that, we've organized and moved people and helped them sharpen and refine their analysis. I mean, having their neighbors die as well because of Also, there's nothing that sharpens and focuses the mind like the threat of death. And so I think that we're also starting to see some of that. But so no, we didn't win the county, but we've made the state more competitive by shifting the needle by 35% in a place that people had written off completely in the past.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Beautiful. Yeah, exactly right. So I want to get to the climax of this thing. Okay, so now we go into the 2021 with the municipal elections and a lot of county and local elections, et cetera, then 2022 and et cetera. But before all that, what now? We've got Biden in the White House. What the hell does that mean? And we've got a Congress that has a Democratic majority in the House, and we'll see what happens in Georgia to the that would affect the U.S. Senate. But then we've got the state houses. They're all going to be up in 2 years, and then we've got the issues, because we won enormous victories with initiatives, ballot initiatives in this last election, and that doesn't get talked about either. That's a lot of Trump people voting for our policies. Our policies seem to be the winning policies in this country overwhelmingly. So what do we do? What's next? What do we do in between?
Listen, what do they say? Before the revolution, you chop wood and carry water. And after the revolution, we gotta chop wood and carry water.
Carry water. There it is.
Listen, I think that historically there has been a huge gap between the rhetoric, right, and the realities of our democracy, of our political parties. And so the work is to close the gap, like how we talk about it. I mean, there's, a whole bunch of, anecdotes that people have, like, Republicans think about, want to have power, Democrats want to be right, and all of that. And so I think that, the way that we train our organizers is that they have twice as many ears as they do mouths. And so, like, as a part of our work is to listen to where the people are, that they will tell you what their hopes are. They will tell you what their fears are for themselves, for their families, for their communities. Right. And that we have to continue to build on top of that. And I think that it's not, ignoring partisan politics, but also it's, recognizing the limitations of two-party politics in this country. Before we got on, I was talking, like, America's too big for two political parties. It just is, right? Like, you have 4 or 5 credible political parties in Canada, and there are more people in California than there are in the entire country of Canada. This country is too big. And so as one party moves to its extreme and becomes less and less popular, the other party is just a bigger and bigger tent that makes it more and more difficult for people to see themselves in it. And so, yeah, I think we cannot take our foot off the gas. We cannot stop organizing within the electoral space, but I also think that it needs to take its rightful and appropriate place within the sort of multiple ecosystems that we need to organize in to bring about the change that we seek.
And George, isn't that part of what People's Action is doing with your deep, what you call deep canvassing? Mm-hmm. Not just doing phone interviews or polls, but actually getting on people's porches or in their backyards.
Yeah. I mean, so deep canvassing is where we go out and have a, 15, 20-minute conversation with a voter on something we definitely don't see eye to eye on, but we don't judge people. We don't debate people. We start where they're at. It's actually, a lot of it's just good organizing, but we start where people are at. We listen. We try to understand, like, what people are up against and how they came to make the meaning they made. And then we share what we're up against and what meaning we've made. We started this in 2018 after we'd done a bunch of organizing in rural communities coming off the election of Trump. And these were like majority white rural areas, but definitely multiracial. And we knocked on 10,000 doors. We asked people what issues they cared about. Then we did what good organizers do. We worked on those issues and we won stuff. And then people moved into a multiracial organizing space, and there was a lot of waking happening. Sometimes the conversations were really hard, but more often than not, they were beautiful and cathartic. And we kept running up against immigration as a bridge too far for some folks. So 20% of the country is pro expanding public health care, raising minimum wage, getting money out of politics, but regressive in some ways on immigration. And so we did a deep canvass in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and we were able to support inclusion of undocumented people in public benefits by 20% from a 15 to 20-minute conversation on the doors. But you can do that on anything. We've done deep canvassing on the phone to push back around anti-Black racism, to push back against kind of anti-Chinese sentiment stirred up by this president. So I think it's like an organizing model, and we did it in this election. That's what we did. We did 280,000 deep canvas conversations across 7 states to help elect Joe Biden. It's really just good organizing, but I think we got to figure out how to be in relationship with some of those folks that got a little mixed up by the right's efforts to divide people, particularly around race. And I think it's got, great promise for going forward.
And don't we have great promise in People's Action and the Georgia Voter Project and groups like that coming together in more of a cohesive, collaborative effort?
Yes. I think so. When is the People's Action coming to Georgia?
I'm going to give you a call. I know you're not twiddling your thumbs, though. I'm going to send you a note. Afia is our board president. She told me to send you a note.
What? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. We should talk more.
See? We know each other already.
Happened on the Hightower.
All right. Okay. Well, y'all are terrific. Thank you so much for what you are doing, and just do more of it. That's all I can say. And we want to stay in touch with you, and we want you to come back with us at any time to talk about what's going on, because people don't know that this is happening. They think because the media covers politics at a superficial media level rather than at a people's level, and that's where y'all are. I can be very optimistic about America by talking to good folks like y'all. So thank you so much for what you're doing. We've got your urals and urinals and all those things that are going to be up on the.
Hightower is our tech expert, but yes, we have all the information up on the screen.
Yeah.
Sure do.
So be in touch with these folks and connect with them and find a way in where you are that you can do exactly what they're doing. In fact, they have outreaches in your area. So let's all team up together. And we're not going to take America back. We're going to take it forward to we the people. All right. Thank you so much. Great to be with you. Bye-bye. Thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. Thanks also to the Our Revolution Network, which connected with us on tonight as well. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.